Welcome, thinkers, to Season 4, Episode 16 of Thinking Critically. Once again, no new updates this week. I continue to stream, mainly some video games at the moment, some Steel Rising. Catch me on twitch.tv/thinkingcritically. Otherwise, we still have one more episode left before the end of the year. So, hope you have a great December, and I'll see you on Christmas Eve. But let's get on with the show. And today I'm joined by Jack Weighill of Dice Average RPG. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, Jack. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'll say I am a designer, an editor, and publisher for tabletop role-playing game content, mostly for 5th edition. I work out of the DM's Guild. I've edited a few bigger projects and have released a fair amount of stuff myself. At the moment, I am currently working, or I've just released a couple of books, namely De Avenir's Pocketbook to Ravenloft as a big book of Ravenloft domains, like an expansion to Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It's published by ttrpg, who I've worked with for a really long time. And I also put out Golem as a book of new construct creatures as well, as sort of a part of a wider project to just sort of revamp a bunch of the different creature types, which I've been toying around with for the past few months.
Awesome. And of course, we're doing your how far through are you in your spell book at the moment?
So my spell book, for those who don't know, is a daily rating of all of the spells in D&D 5e, sort of going through them alphabetically. I am currently midway through E. I am at 130 something. I'm not sure. I have written up to 136. 135 was put out today. I'm up to tomorrow's one, so I'll be writing some more tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, yeah, a lot then to go off of. And the reason I bring up your spell book is, of course, because today's topic is spells. So what does that mean to you in the D&D and wider TTRPG framework?
One of my first things on the guild was releasing a book of spells, and it was one of the bigger things I did early on. It was sort of a compilation of a lot of the stuff I'd made really, really early on. I then went back and upgraded it a bit because a lot of it was I made very early on and it kind of sucked. But I'm a big fan of the way spells work in 5e, especially they bring a lot to the table. That they are probably my favorite thing to design. And I have made an ungodly amount of them. The ones I've published on the guild is in the 300s range. The ones I've made personally is well over 500, I think, of just revamping spells that exist in the game already. I've made it my personal my personal mission to make the list of spells in my home game as comedically large as possible, which it already is, but that's not going to stop me. Yes, the going through and learning about spells I haven't really thought about, seeing new spells come out and going, oh, cool, this spell's actually really interesting, or going, this spell's a bag of wank, it's terrible, it's a really fun process of sort of having that kind of sort of a top-down view of the way the spells work and sort of how effective they are in your average game and in games where people play a lot more rules as written, which is how I quite like to play the game. Is not to the letter. Technically, you can stabilize creatures through time and space because there's no stipulation on range.
Oh yeah,
but within the spirit of reasonability, running the game rules as written. Is how I quite enjoy it, and sort of the kind of the strategy of exactly what is strong and what very specifically isn't in different ways. I've always found really interesting. There's a lot of spells that in a vacuum seem really, really strong.
Yeah.
But if you, depending on how you play the game and how your DM runs the game, makes them wildly all over the place. Like there are some spells where DMs can sort of run them wrong in some way, and it makes them absurd.
Yeah.
And a lot of like area of effect spells where you put them down. Oh, it's enters the area for the first time on a turn, or starts its turn there. Yes.
I use Moonbeam as my paladin, and every time I'm like, okay, so I've done it now, but actually nothing happens for maybe half an hour, like in real time.
So I used to run spells where it was like, well, they've entered the area because you've just made it for a really long time. And then it became very apparent, like after probably about 2 or 3 years of running spells like that, that it made certain spells horrendously overpowered. And then there's other spells like it where creatures have to end their turn in the area, which under all circumstances are awful.
Yep.
Like Incendiary Cloud, 8th level spell, huge damage, massive area, heavily obscured area, really strong. Only does damage to creatures that end their turn in the area. Therefore, it is terrible. It's a terrible spell.
Because what creature of their right mind is going to choose to walk into this?
Yeah, or creatures that, you drop it on top of them. I think they take the damage on cast, which is not bad, but they can just walk out of it. Like, and why would they not?
Even if, because when I was looking into Moonbeam and good ways to, effective ways to apply that, it was like, oh, this is a good area of, area denial. Like you put it in a choke point, everybody has to walk through it. They get busted by it. So say there's a corridor that's 5 foot wide and very long. You put it in the middle, every creature that walks through triggers it because it's when they enter. But for that Incendiary Cloud, they could just run through it and not take the damage, right? Even if it's 30 foot, they could just dash outside, inside, outside, and take no damage, right? If I understand,
Like like there are instances where it can do that, where it like burns their turn, like they have to dash through, which is pretty powerful. But for an 8th level slot, it's not. That you can cast what is the spell? Hunger of Hadar, which is the same kind of thing, but it is a difficult terrain. It has magical darkness and worded in the worst way possible, but it is technically magical darkness. Like, so creatures moving through the area, they basically have to spend their whole turn to dash through, maybe more. So Hunger of Hadar is not too bad, but like Incendiary Cloud, I think is probably the biggest one where it's like, this is just a bad spell.
Yeah, for an 8th level, I agree. We've talked so much already, and I think it's a really interesting it's a really good lens to look at D&D and 5e and the rules and kind of the design intent through the spells. Like the way, what they're trying to achieve, or where they're thinking about things, and where, it feels like they've tried to experiment with something and it hasn't quite worked, but it's just like a vestigial spell that's been left in just for historical purposes. It's very interesting to view D&D through the lens of the spells, and that's one of the things your Spellbook series of tweets is I find interesting reading, because I'm like, I never thought of it that way, or, oh yeah, I guess you could use the spell in that application, and it just can completely change, once you've taken a really good look at the spell, because frankly, like, D&D Beyond has helped. Looking at, when you get given a class that can cast spells, it will filter it down and say, here's the 10 you can pick, and you can quite quickly click on one. But when I was making my first characters way back when with the books, man, there's like a zillion spells, and I'm not reading every single one and trying. That was just going to take hours and hours and hours, for it to be potentially garbage. Like, that's just such a waste of waste of time. But that trap still exists. I have lost count the amount of times my players have mainly all new, apart from 2, have picked a spell and gone, wow, this sounds cool, let me use it. And I've gone, oh, actually, have you read that one? Do you want to have another little quick read for me? And they'll sit there and go, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, so I have to be underwater for sake of argument. And I've gone, yeah. And they've gone, well, cool. That's just a wasted.
Yeah. My attitude has always been like, if a player is about to stumble into a trap, like usually, I will ask players when they're leveling up, like, oh, what are you picking? For the exact purpose of like, oh, I want to pick this. So I can go, okay, maybe think about this before you.
Yeah.
Because one big thing I've really kind of noticed about 5e, more so than any other like game or piece of media I've really engaged with, is you can't think about it like gameplay wise in the same way you would something like World of Warcraft, or really just any other game, like, or any like an MMO or a MOBA or something is probably the best example. And the best comparison I can think of is in an RPG or an MMO or something like that. The best thing you can be doing all the time when you are playing a healer is to constantly heal people who are damaged. You just, you're missing health? Okay, here you go. Here's my healing spell. Because that mana or whatever resource it is that you use generally comes back, usually very quickly. 5e does not work that way. And the healing spells that you have in MMOs and MOBAs and things like that are usually really good. Here's a fifth of your health back. Here's 80% of your health back. Just one button, there you go. 5e, there is one spell that does that, and it's heal. And heal's actually really good. Every other healing spell is, here's 10 hit points. Are you higher than level 2? Okay, right, that was negligible.
Yeah,
I have actively wasted my turn and a spell slot healing you. Like this is a lesson, I guess, for people who may not already know this. I hammer on about this in my home game all the time. Of if they aren't unconscious, you do not cast the healing spell. Like Aura of Vitality, sure, fine. Healing Spirit, yeah, okay, can't hurt. But if you're casting Healing Word or Cure Wounds on someone who has more than 0 hit points, you have officially wasted your spell slot. Unless you are first level. And even then, you have so few spell slots, it's probably still a waste.
And the enemies are so low that a first level spell will probably finish one off anyway. And of course, having no enemies on the board is the best way to not lose health.
Yes.
But yeah, obviously that's a very good example of what I was trying to talk about earlier on, in that it's a way to view the design of the game, and healing spells is a very, very, very good example of that. I've been disappointed myself. I've seen the disappointment in other people where they go, check this level 4 cure wounds. I'm going to heal our tank right up. Clack, clack, clack. That'll be 12. And it's like, the barbarian's got 150 HP, so cool. And an effective 300 with raging. So 12 is, I guess, effective 24, but still, like, nothing. It is, again, that brings you into that discussion of the potential drawbacks of the rule set in terms of yo-yoing and up and down, up and down. I've talked about it on the health episode before, where it's that yo-yo effect of he's down, he's up, he's down, he's up. And now I've finally sat down to think about it. It is a really weird way of viewing health. I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft and thankfully kicked that habit many years ago. But for a brief spell, I was a healing paladin, and it is like you said, as soon as you're out of combat, mana's back. Like, it just starts regenning at like 500% rate, or you just use some weird ability that you've got, and it's all back again. And yeah, you're just blasting like AoE cone of healing that's just like douche 80% health across the board. Fine. Instant heal to full. Yep, fine. That 10 minutes and I'll get that back, no problem. So the way you approach the idea of health as a resource is very different. I think I can talk until the cows come home about the differences between video games and tabletop RPGs, but that's one of them that I think is often overlooked, or at least we haven't talked about in detail on the show before, where it is that resource management, and not just like, it's an interesting decision. Do I spend X or do I spend Y to save Z? It's no, health is this very weird thing that you don't know what it is. And a similar thing, again, regular listeners of the show will know I'm an avid Gloomhaven player, which is a board game, tactical, hex-based fighting, elements of random, but very gritty and crunchy mechanics. Throwback to earlier seasons there. And that HP in that is not health. It's going to sound very weird, but like, it's not. Again, healing is a lossy process for most of the characters and most of the classes, because HP isn't this thing to be like, I'm now weaker. It's just I'm not explaining it very well, but those who play will know that it is just another resource to spend, because you can lose cards to just completely mitigate damage. So then it's like, again, your cards are your health rather than your actual HP. Your HP is just like a shield.
Yeah.
And it's your cards that are more important, because when you run out of cards, you definitely can't play anymore. Your health is just like this weird little shield buffer in front of your actual health, which is the cards you hold in your hand. And I feel like that is probably weirdly similar to to health and healing in D&D, more so than obviously World of Warcraft.
I've always kind of considered, like, I know I was sort of stepping away from spells a little bit, but like when I think of health in D&D, it's sort of that especially a lot of like older players who are like, oh, you regain 1 hit point every long rest. Back in my day, like, I've encountered a few people like that. Some of them are very friendly and they're just like, oh, this is how the game was played. And some of them aren't. That's just kind of people are like that. And they sort of have a negative opinion of 5th edition and all newer editions, especially because you get all your health back on a long rest. And to a lot of people now, to think about like getting one hit point every long rest, or 1 hit point every week. If I remember correctly, it was earlier. That I'm don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly certain that was like something similar to that in like really early editions, where like campaigns would literally be campaigns. They were like a war campaign would last a year in universe, maybe longer. But they sort of scoff at 5e, like, oh, you just take a nap and you're fine. But it's the hit points become a lot more abstract. When I think of hit points in 5e, it's like if you take damage, it's less I have been stabbed. It's more I have narrowly avoided turning a minor surface injury into actually being stabbed in the stomach. Whereas when you drop to 0, oh, I've actually been like seriously injured. And then the healing spells kind of make a bit more sense because they heal the serious injury and leave the kind of surface level, so like flesh wound, I guess.
Yeah, and again, especially at higher levels, so my guys are now level 11, level 12-ish, and building engaging combat encounters is a story unto itself, and one I won't get into today, but very tricky because they've got so many abilities, their ACs are so high, like actually doing damage to their HP is almost a rare occurrence nowadays. and to challenge them, you need to throw bigger and bigger creatures at them. For those listening, don't at me. I know all the tricks and all the tips, targets, objectives, dynamic encounters, dynamic environments, all that kind of stuff, mobs of lower, do it all. And the last combat they had a fire giant dreadnought show up.
Oh, I love those things.
It's kind of like the boss of that particular encounter. Kind of like halfway through, it appeared through a fire portal and was like, I'm a walking shield, and just yeeted 2 huge rocks at the flying cleric. It's got like plus 12 to hit on these flying rocks, and it just did an insane like 79 damage between the two of them. Can't remember if that was a crit or not, but just a huge amount of damage, just like boom. And the cleric went from full HP, maybe even with temporary HP, I think, because of his Twilight, so he gets some weird OP Twilight aura thing. But
I was wondering why you were having some problems with hitting players and damage. And so, oh, there's a Twilight cleric in your party. Okay, that explains everything.
To be fair to that player, I sent him a meme that was like players that play these kind of characters, and he played like loads of them. So I was like, from this meme I can guess what your next build will be. And he's all jokes aside, if you want me to tone down my Twilight cleric, I can. And I was like, no, it's fine. You
can't tone down a Twilight cleric. It's just innately how Twilight clerics are. It's not like Hexadin or like like all the Hexblade 1-dips and all that nonsense where it's like you have to consciously decide to do it. The simple act of playing a Twilight cleric means that your character is fundamentally overpowered, because Twilight Cleric was designed by someone on drugs and playtested by several more people who were all inexplicably also on drugs. The same goes for Peace. Yeah. It's a wild pie that results in Tasha's is so great. All of the content in it is incredible, and there's just Twilight and Peace domain just sort of being the worst designed piles of junk just slapped on top of them. Like, oh, cool.
Yes.
Way to tarnish the reputation of an otherwise really fantastic book.
Yeah, that is what he is. So he's just flying around, huge aura of darkness. Everybody gets dark vision, and everybody gets temporary hit points. So he's sitting there, boom, goes down to like single digits, and that was just such a weird, completely like changed the dynamic in one turn of a fight. And there was no, and I'm still working out, I mean, they enjoyed it, which I guess is the most important thing. Like, that's fine. But I'm still trying to work out whether that should have been a bit slower than just like, boom, the cleric is now on like 5 HP and he's the only one that can revive and heal people. So, but anyway, we've digressed hugely into the HP specifically. But because the spells took us on that discussion, because it is very interesting to be like, because they as you said, as you brought it up, they are the trap spells. Some of them are more so than others, but a lot of them are like, just don't bother. Which is why I quite like that there's no obviously some classes are more skewed and some subclasses specifically are more skewed to like, if you heal somebody, they get the maximum number. Is that a druid subclass? Maybe that's a cleric subclass.
It's grave domain when they target creatures on 0 hit points, which is actually a pretty cool ability because it empowers the one type of healing that's actually good. It's like, my Cure Wounds is maximized at the time when I should be casting it anyway. Nice.
Yes, and that's nice scaling as well, because obviously you upcast that, then that's a lot of maximum dice.
That actually makes upcasting the healing spells good as well, which is even stranger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at the end of that fight with the Dreadnought, they won. I think a couple of them were down, and the cleric just did like mass. I forgot. Is it mass Cure Wounds or there's another one?
There's mass Healing Word and mass Cure Wounds are the ones that come to mind.
Maybe it was mass Healing Word, but then he also dropped like, is it just like heal? That is just like a flat 80 or something like that.
Yeah, heal is a flat number.
Yeah,
I think it's 70 for a 6th level slot plus 10 per level. I think. Hang on,
yeah,
I have an index on me right now. It is 70 hit points. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, well remembered. I was close. I'm happy with my 80.
Yeah, I'd say I have a 17th level cleric in one of my games as well, and heal is we have the barbarian who is the highest damage dealer in the party, but gets melted for most of his health every single turn. So this poor dude who came to play a cool Forge Cleric basically has to spend every turn casting heal on the Barbarian to stop him from dying.
Yes, yeah. And that funnily enough, that was on another one of my players who's hard to kill, a 8 Blood Hunter 3 Barbarian multi-class guy who is just an insanely complicated class of high AC and damage resistance and damage output. And he went down low, which he never likes because he doesn't like losing HP. And then, the Twilight Cleric was like, boom, there's your 70 HP. And his eyes lit up like it was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
I'm back up again. That's lovely. That's the biggest heal I've ever seen anyone do, I think were his words. I wanted to talk a little bit more about these trap spells. I've mentioned them briefly on other episodes. A few spring to mind when I was thinking about this earlier on. One was it True Strike? Is the classic? is the archetypical? Haha, we got you. You've wasted a spell slot.
I'm gonna reveal a secret to you. Is that I rate all my spells 1 to 5.
Yeah.
Obviously 1 being terrible. You should never pick this. It's just bad. 5 being this is fantastic. It's either broken or it's so good that if you have the opportunity to pick it, you probably should. It's really good. I've been saving 0 specifically for True Strike. It is the only spell in the game, I think, that has no use. Yeah. It is actively detrimental to cast and gives you nothing of use.
Yep.
Like there are plenty of bad spells. Like I did Elemental Bane.
Oh yes,
yesterday.
Yep.
I think, and that is just a bad spell. Like it is a very bad spell. For mostly you spend a turn, you have to concentrate, they get a save against it anyway for an effect that's just a worse hex for a 4th level slot. Like it's just a terrible spell. But at the very least, it still does something.
Yes.
Like True Strike, you spend your turn, you concentrate to gain advantage on an attack on your next turn. So if you quicken it, like for the longest time, I had like a Sorcerer Rogue in a game I used to run on a Saturday, and she quickened True Strike because neither of us read it, that it said the first attack on your next turn.
Oh, God.
So you can't even... I for the longest time, I was like, no, True Strike's good because you can quicken it as a rogue. And it's, this very specific instance, it's actually... No, it doesn't work. True Strike is just bad. It's genuinely like... It almost feels like it was a joke. Like 3.5 True Strike is plus 20 to hit on your next attack, which is actually cool.
Damn.
But in the context of 3.5, I think plus 20 to hit is not as crazy as it sounds.
Of course, yes, because they changed the way, the scaling and stuff.
Like 3.5 and 5e are like weirdly parable, except in the grounds of specific like numbers, like bonuses and ACs get into like the 40s in 3.5. I think the same for 4th edition as well, but otherwise they're surprisingly parable.
I feel like every time some poor bastard casts True Strike at their table, somebody at Wizards of the Coast just has they just get a message that some royalties ding on their phone vibrates. Another poor soul. And that's it. They put it in the game to please some Machiavellian entity that enjoys suffering.
So I'm trying to think of other like interesting.
So there is another one I thought of was I think I have used True Strike. It is the classic like, oh, I've not had advantage before. Rolling 2 dice, that sounds great. Fine, I'll do it. And then once you actually sit down and think about like opportunity cost and spell slots and stuff, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the moment you spend 2 seconds thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute. This isn't doing anything at all. The other one that I've read isn't very good is the one that's like Force Lightning. What is it? Witch Bolt? That is
Witch
like
Bolt, yes.
You can do like 1d10 per turn or something like that.
It is 1d. It is a ranged weapon attack. It does 1d12 lightning damage, and on your turn you can spend an action to do another 1d12 damage.
Yeah, I've taken that and used that, and I didn't read it properly, and then got to my next turn and was like, oh, it's an action to do the damage again. Oh,
yeah. Spell also ends if you use your action to do anything else, or if you're ever outside of the spell's 30-foot range.
Yeah. Don't want to play in this combat anymore. Just do Witch Bolt and then just turn your brain off, because that's the only thing you can do from now on. Do they save every turn, or is it a straight? Is it at least...
They don't get a save, but the damage is so negligible. Like, who cares? Just cast, I don't know, Chaos Bolt or Chromatic Orb or something. You will do more damage.
Yeah. So those are the two. True Strike and Witch Bolt are the two that.
Yeah.
True Strike is the poster boy for bad spells, but Witch Bolt is a one that surprised me again, because it's more hidden. More hidden sounds better on paper, but
Witch Bolt is definitely from my perspective, it's probably the number 2 of like there are a lot of like quite well known ones that are just, like Crown of Madness is bad for basically the same reason Witch Bolt is. You have to spend your turn to do something that isn't really all that good, except they also get a save as well.
Oh, okay.
Like Crown of Madness is very, very bad.
Is that the one that's like you can control another creature? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
but you lose your own agency because you're having to control them anyway. So
yeah. So it charms them. The charmed creature must use its action before moving on each of its turns to make a melee attack against a creature other than itself that you mentally choose.
Before moving?
Yeah. So if there's no one near it, there's nothing you can do. And you have to spend your action every turn to maintain control over the target. And the target can make a wisdom save at the end of each of their turns to end the spell.
God. So yeah, So yeah, that's... So firstly, net combatants stays the same. They lose you, but they gain an enemy. So I guess...
kinda, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah, ideally, that's how it works. So I guess technically the enemies lose 1-man power on their side. Fine. Okay, maybe for a turn. If there's somebody close to them, they'll get an attack off. If not, you have to spend at least one of those turns moving them somewhere. There's at least 2 turns lost if they're not adjacent to somebody already.
And if they're not adjacent to someone, they just get to take their turn normally anyway. So,
indeed,
yeah.
And so what you're effectively doing, because probably they'll start to be chances of breaking out by second, third turn is probably pretty high, depending on obviously other context. To that point, it's like a worse stun, because you've had to take yourself and them out rather than just a stun, which a monk can do every melee hit.
Yeah.
Cool.
What other ones? I'm trying.
While you're looking, I'll give you some time to look. It does make you laugh, doesn't it? I don't know what it feels deliberate at this point.
Yeah.
It can't be a mistake. Those 3 we've mentioned, plus the healing ones being a bit janky. It feels like they've been... Was it like otherwise intelligent people have designed them because they've designed the other spells. So at some point they must have gone, okay, this is useless. Ship it. That's okay.
Yeah.
But why? What is that? What is there? What are we missing? I feel like I'm missing something. There's a reason why that would do that. Is it like a built-in teaching exercise to be like, haha, make sure you read the spells because you just wasted a spell slot? I don't know.
I think most of it is down to the content in the player's handbook, because if you really go back and look at like some of the other stuff in the player's handbook, most of it's bad. Not specifically the spells, but like all of the class options, with some very specific exceptions, are just really terrible. Rogue has 1 mediocre subclass in Arcane Trickster. The other 2 are just awful. Barbarian, if you're not Bear Totem Barbarian, they're both, Berserker is bad, All the other totem options are not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Bard, Valor is not great. Law is all right. Cleric has exactly one good one, 2 mediocre ones, and all the other, like, 7 are terrible. Tempest is fantastic. It's actually really good. Light is okay. Life is also okay. All the others, off the top of my head, suck.
Yeah.
With the exception of, like, Wizard, which has Abjuration and Divination, which are probably the best subclasses in the Player's Handbook. Divination is like... Divination is the source of many of my bad beat DMing stories of Force Cage, Scatter, Portent. Sorry, you failed to save. You're inside the Force Cage now. Yeah. I mean, most of my bad beat DMing stories just involve the players casting the spell Force Cage.
Right.
that spell is a poison.
We'll come back to that one in a second. So let's talk about that one in a second.
Things to say about Force Cage.
Let me give you a platform. What was it? What was the other wizard one? Sorry, Divination and Abjuration.
Abjuration isn't like absurd, but it's very, very good, and it's actually really fun. It allows you to, if you really sort of spec into it, you can not really tank, but you can be very, very difficult to harm.
Awesome.
Yeah, Abjuration Wizard is very good fun.
Whoa,
like,
yeah,
Transmutation is okay. It's definitely the middle of the road one, but all of the others are mostly just kind of whatever. And unless you really metagame with Conjuration Wizard and Minor Conjuration, which is a special kind of, like, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, Abjuration at level 14 gets advantage on saving throws against spells and resistance against spells, which is just insane.
See, that's the it's specifically spells. There are a lot of monsters that do magical things. Spells.
I should know better. Tisk, because we've literally just had this in one of the campaigns I'm playing in. Been fighting a lot of like illithids and mind flayers and stuff, and they've got so much, which I'm like, because we got me and a bard both like sweating to do counterspell because my paladin took one of the things that allows it to do counterspell, and we're like, is that a spell? Is that a spell? It just says it like does this thing. No, it's not a spell.
Yeah.
Fine. So yeah, you're absolutely right on that one.
They also have psionic spells, which don't have somatical verbal components, so you can't see them casting the spell, and therefore you can't counterspell them either. Which is
look at that little niche edge case there of the counterspell. Yes,
trying to find a lot of the really, really bad spells I think are mostly down to the general low power content of the stuff in the Player's Handbook, and because there are so many spells in the Player's Handbook, I think it is like, given especially how small the D&D like rules team is, I know like the original designers for 5th edition, there was obviously there's J. Craw, and then there's the other guy, and then to my understanding the rest of their team, I'm not sure how big they are, but it's a very small team, and being able to get all of them to test the 300 and something spells in the Player's Handbook, and like for all of them to turn out good. I'm not at all surprised something like Crown of Madness or Witch Bolt slipped through the cracks of especially because the game was so new, and they're not like, to my understanding, a lot of older editions of D&D don't quite have the sort of action economy, I wouldn't say problem, but like aspect of the game quite as heavily as 5th edition does.
Yeah.
I wouldn't quote me on that because my experience with other editions of the game is limited. And the general people who go super hard on like learning exactly how to play these games to the letter is not anywhere near as big for any of the other editions either. So that may be wrong, but there's a lot of things in older editions where spells are generally just way stronger.
Yeah, like
people talk about the martial caster disparity in 5e until the cows come home, whether they're right or not. But we have it easy compared to 3.5 players, where it's you play into sort of later levels in 3.5, just stop playing a fighter. Like, what are you doing? Why would you stab a guy 4 times when you can turn said guy into a pile of mush or whatever? It just
turn him inside out. Yeah. I saw it. Funny you should mention that. I saw the meme today. Have you seen that Invincible meme from the TV show Invincible, where the guy's punching him and he grabs the fist out of the air? And the first panel is casters, outplay marshals at high levels. It's just absurd. And then the catch is like, but this campaign isn't getting past level 10. And I said that to my players and was like, yeah, leveling up's gonna slow, so you might want to start thinking about if you've got your heart set on a level 20 build, you might want to settle in for a little while, because that might not come.
I've played into sort of later tier 4 multiple times. Like I have a game right now where the characters have just hit 17th level and the campaign is going to be ending quite soon. And I've played other games where they've got to 17th, 18th level. Only one campaign has gotten players to 20th level and beyond. I had to like invent content of like, what does a level 21 rogue get? Sure, this.
More sneak attack. When in doubt for rogues, just more.
There was some crazy stuff in there. That a lot of things I ended up sort of homebrewing into the base game as well. Like rogues with the ability to take extra bonus actions by spending a resource turns out just a really fun game mechanic. I just slapped it into base rogue. It's very fun. But at that higher level, spellcasters are just gods. Like even in 5e, it is just a case of like, okay, right, turn 1. Here are the enemies. Here is my 9th level spell. I cast Meteor Swarm. They are all dead now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a sorcerer. I shall careful spell, so all my friends are fine, and all my enemies are glue.
Yeah, and again, I feel for my players. Again, we're digressing a little bit here, but I feel for my players when they, the newer ones, especially when they start hitting those levels, and the Twilight Cleric is just insane.
Yep.
The Warlock is already insane. Glass Cannon. Again, Hexblade, so his modifiers and to hits and damage for his Eldritch bolts are just like +4, +2, +8, a D7. D7 dice doesn't even exist. That's how wild this.
This you add your charisma. Hexblade's Curse gives you proficiency bonus, and then probably 2 other things. Rod of the Pact Keeper or something like that.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, that's a 30 to hit. Roll for damage. That's 25, and then I'm like, oh god, that's at level 11. So we'll see.
Hexblade is most definitely the Twilight and Peace Cleric of Xanathar's, where it is absurdly powerful compared to everything else.
Well, I've got both of my games. That's cool.
Yep. I'd say that plus 20 plus level game I was talking about. Basically, the star of that game was a Hexfire who I didn't quite understand the power of Eldritch Smite until I came in, and my Frost Giant boss for these level 7 characters. One shot, just strides on in, critical hit. 80 damage. So that character, I think I actually tallied somewhere the highest damage she output in a single round was like 360 something.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was Eldritch Smite crit, plus at least one other crit, Action Surge, Grey Weapon Master, the whole shebang. Plus Spirit Shroud, that was an important one, and Hexblade's Curse. Spirit Shroud is another one where it's Spirit Shroud is bananas.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going so long in this campaign now. I feel like I have to. They're hungry for it. I feel like at least the last battle, I'll be like, just sod it. Let's just do it. Let's just go ape shit and just see what
goes out the window.
See if Danlo the DM even survives this combat. Because at the end, I will just be a puddle of mush on the floor.
Nothing better than a good boss fight, though.
So we've talked obviously about the tricky trap spells, the ones that trick you into thinking they're good and then actually garbage. What ones are you aware of then that are like, well, let's keep it simple first. Which ones are just off the top of your head, like objectively just decent? As you said, your 4s and your 5s out of 5s. And then we can talk about the ones that maybe on paper, the like complete opposite, maybe on paper seem underwhelming, but then actually in use, surprisingly effective. And if they're 2 of the same, if that Venn diagram is a complete circle, then so be it.
I think there's sort of like a bread and butter of like, these spells are fantastic. You should probably pick them if you have the option to. I think the obvious ones, Healing Word, just as a general thing, if you have access to Healing Word, you take it. Just flat out, you take it. And as another thing, you don't need Cure Wounds and Healing Word. Healing Word is objectively better in every conceivable way. There is no circumstance where Cure Wounds will matter more than Healing Word. You don't need to waste a prepared slot to take both. Just Healing Word, it's fine. If you're a wizard or any class that gets it, Shield is honestly like I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but I know a lot of people who have sort of my kind of outlook or take on the game will say that Shield is overpowered, which I think is it really depends on how you play the game and what kind of character you build, but it definitely can be. It's very high levels. It's a permanent +5 AC, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have access to it, you should probably pick it.
And also apart from magic items, the only spell to mitigate magic missile, I think. Off the top of my head.
There is shield and the brooch of shielding, which is a pretty bad magic item otherwise, but also negates magic missile.
Yeah,
which is it never really comes up in my game, but I know magic missile is very good for concentration breaking because you send 9 missiles at a guy and they're probably going to fail one of those con saves.
Yeah, that's his job. I'm going to have to start for my Twilight Cleric and the Warlock, who are always concentrating on something. I'm just going to have an armada of magic missile casters.
As long as their con bonus isn't so high that they make the save every time.
Warcaster for the Warlock, unfortunately. However, he has been known to fail. So.
Yeah, no, Warcaster obviously helps a lot, but when you're making that many saves, you probably fail one of them.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, that shield is handy. Is that do I remember correctly? Do you get to know the number that you're trying to? So say your AC is 15. Do you know that they've hit 16
it's when an attack
17?
would hit you. So you would hear the number and you're like, oh, that's a 20. My AC 17. I know I can shield that.
Okay, so that a good question then. So we're going to go into like DM agency in a way here. So in that situation, you said you'd hear the number, but I guess it's theoretical to say, well, the DM should know what your AC is and should just say, oh, this hits. It's a bit like when you try and counterspell a level higher, you don't know that it's a level 6. So you've got to kind of take that educated guess of like.
I think with counterspell, it's a bit more sort of like that it works in a very specific way. But I think with shield, if you change it so that you don't tell them the number, shield is just terrible because it's a trap. Like you're gambling a spell slot on something that probably won't help. Which is I can't imagine. Well, I can definitely imagine worse feelings as a player, but certainly from a player's perspective, like that feels really bad. That feels like the DM is sort of holding their kind of position of power over information over you, and like, oh, your spell doesn't work because I didn't tell you the information that would otherwise have made your spell work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I understand like the mentality of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't tell them, but it's like I would much rather. Like, shield is still like a neat spell. I would much rather shield be a little stronger than it probably should be. I say a lot stronger than it probably should be than just be terrible. Because I like shield, even if it is very, very powerful.
Yeah. So I just brought it up, but it's just including against the triggering attack, which you take when you hit. So technically, I guess depending on how you run the game, you don't need to know the number, but in 9 times out of 10 does a 17 hit. I mean, I do it.
Yeah, I say I think to my knowledge, it is rules written that you are supposed to tell them the number, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, but and also it's not just for that. See, a lot of things in Gloomhaven and also other features and stuff of D&D is like it's just against the one triggering thing on the next attack or on the next time you'll hit. But shield is good because it's until the start of your next turn, which is insane. Yeah. Obviously, if you time that, like you've just had your turn, oh, I need to shield, that's a whole round's worth of combat of +5 AC for the first level spell.
Yeah, a high level shield is free. Like it is free +5 AC forever. And in the 5-minute adventuring day becomes the way you play the game. In obviously people talk the 5-minute adventuring day is a bad way to design your games, yada yada yada. But I can't think of anybody or any reasonable way to make tier 3 and 4 not super annoying and sloggy, and also not a 5-minute adventuring day. At which point spells like shield, healing word, silvery barbs, like low level, really spammable spells actually start to become a problem because they are just free.
You say they're free because you have so many spell slots.
Yeah. Basically. And or if you're a high level wizard, shield is literally free because you choose it as your signature spell.
Hell yeah.
And the Abjuration wizard does love a free shield, and it's a good time.
It'd be so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot that they literally get free spells as well.
Yeah.
As wizards at higher levels. Is that every class or is it just Abjuration subclasses?
It's the wizard's 18th level feature. I think it's spell mastery. I think is the one. Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I do remember seeing it. The first level and the second level. Man, that is wild.
Speaking of, the second level spell that you pick is Misty Step.
Oh god,
you
yeah.
pick Shield and you pick Misty Step because Misty Step is Misty Step isn't quite like Shield because you are casting a spell on your turn. Like the only thing else you're going to do on that turn is cast a cantrip, but
Yes.
it is probably your best escape tool because it doesn't take your entire turn. You can teleport 30 feet out of danger. It's not universally useful, but it never hurts to have. You will be in situations where Misty Step saves your life, especially because it's verbal only. You can teleport out of grapples. You can teleport out of being restrained. You can teleport out of being surrounded by 19 guys who are going to stab you in the face. Like, it's
great.
Yeah.
Misty's Spell is great, yeah, absolutely. Easy picks, shield, and reaction and bonus action as well. So you see your actions, apart from, obviously, being limited to cantrips when you do Misty Step.
Yeah.
That, like, you've still got all your action stuff ready to go, which is great. I wanted to jump in there with a quick question. Talking of Misty Step saving your life, this has come up way more times than I'd like, and I don't know if there is an official answer or not, but conservation of momentum when using spells that teleport you, like Misty Step and Dimension Door and Plane Shift, or the other one that transports you to planes. So I've had this question so many times of like, I'm in freefall, I want to Misty Step a foot above the floor, completely horizontal, and then just drop that last foot safely? Or do you, when you appear, do you still have that conservation of momentum at terminal velocity?
I don't think there's a rules written answer to it. There might be a sage advice on it. Crawford is generally pretty good. I like, not all of his sage advice answers are satisfactory. Sometimes he kind of talks in circles a little bit.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, his takes are reasonable enough.
Because I've wanted to do that. I've had players who have gone, oh, that's fine, I'll just Dimension Door when I hit the bottom, and I'll just remove. And I'm like, but Featherfall's meant to do that, and I feel like that's going to overlap. And now I'm like, has that just made Featherfall redundant? And it just gets around in that. Well, no, I'm teleporting, so
yeah, I don't see a definitive answer. I would generally rule that no, you don't maintain your momentum, but it really depends. Like, because in my angle is, it's always really obvious when players are trying to kind of finagle around the rules to get what they want, and usually my response to that is to say, you're trying to finagle around the rules to get what you want. No, it doesn't work. Because usually it specifically just doesn't work that way, and you'd say no is entirely justified because that isn't how it works. But sometimes, certainly something like that, I would just say, no, it doesn't work that way. I guess it's more like there's cool ways of doing it, like Misty Stepping, jumping 20 feet, Misty Stepping up further to get further across like a wide gap. That's cool. Whereas I want to use my teleportation spell to mitigate the falling damage I'd otherwise take right now. I guess with the way falling works, you technically immediately fall 500 feet when you fall until you hit a surface, it makes it kind of hard to do, but it's weird and finagly.
Yes, it is, and I've been caught up that so many times of like, well, Misty Step, you just disappear and reappear, but Dimension Door, you're actually like going through a portal. So like maybe that one you would conserve your momentum, but Misty Step you don't. But then you get into the real muddy waters of like, well, you've just decelerated a lot.
Yeah, I'm never a fan of like heat metal makes the metal glow red hot. Technically, that makes the metal. That means that an iron suit of armor is heated to this amount. This would melt human skin and bones immediately, causing them to die. And I'm like, I mean, yes, technically, but that's just the flavor text. Flavor text does not influence mechanics at all.
Yeah. I've got one player who's does both of those things. He will very much latch on to that kind of stuff, but innocently, like, oh, is that not what happens? Is that not what they mean by the wording of this spell? And I have to be like, oh, well, no, not in that instance. 2 sentences later, that's the bit that really, really, really matters. That is just kind of like, just fluff, like you said. And then on the other hand, he'll misread the important couple of sentences, and then I'm like, oh, sorry, dude. Don't want to have another gander at that one because that's not going to do it. For you.
There's like a few things, especially in like 5th edition, that I know they're not going to do for 1D&D, but I would like them to do, is keep flavor text, but relegate it to like italicized text at the top of the spell.
Yeah.
It won't take up a huge amount of space, but will completely remove all of those bits of confusion whilst keeping all of the cool flavor that the spells get to have. I think 4th edition does something like it, but I might be wrong. And I want more tags. I love tags. Like, we have one spell tag We need more. 3.5 has a million of them. The spell doesn't need to do fire damage to be a fire spell. Just give it the fire tag, and then I can get bonuses to all of my fire tagged spells. I want that. That's what I want.
Quality of life.
Yeah, I have the smite tag in my home game to make all of the smite spells not terrible by buffing them and then making most of them not concentration, and then having the smite tag so that you can't stack them.
Yeah,
which has made smite spells go from just objectively worse than using divine smite to actually really good.
Yeah, I get that. That is actually another classic for baby paladins to be like, whoa, branding smite, whoa, blinding smite, whoa, all the other kind of smites.
Branding
smite.
smite.
Let me stack out my spellbook with all these things, and then you're like, yeah, just do regular smites, unless this thing's exceptionally susceptible to whatever it is you're trying to do.
There are a couple of good smite spells. Wrathful is quite good.
Mm-hmm. So the one that makes people run away?
Yeah, I'd say it is actually
fear effect.
Yeah, it's actually very good. What are the other smites? Oh, there's not as many as I thought. Staggering is okay. It's not fantastic, but it's not bad. Blinding is not great. Yeah, basically most of them are mediocre at best, or just kind of worse than other options you've already got. Why would I cast Banishing Smite when I can just cast Banishment? Banishment is just better. Why would I hit a guy and maybe banish them when I can just cast Banishment? Is already amazing. Why would I cast a worse version of it that's a higher level?
Yeah,
it's just there's the smite spells. There's a lot of other ones that paladins don't get, like Ensnaring Strike and Hail of Thorns and stuff. I mean, Hail of Thorns kind of sucks, but Ensnaring Strike is okay. I think there are some others, but those are the ones that come to mind immediately. Most of them suck, which is a shame because they are cool.
Yeah,
and way more cool than Divine Smite can ever hope to be.
Yeah,
I really don't like Divine Smite because it makes the already not very good smite spells just actively uncastable, because they're just objectively worse than using Divine Smite in basically all circumstances.
Yeah, and also having played a paladin, it removes the interesting choice a little bit, because of let me save, or at least just keep all my spell slots for the odd crit here and there.
Yep.
Then dash on Divine. There's no interesting choice to make in that situation. It's, have I crit? Yes or no. Smite? Yes or no. Yes, you can smite when you don't crit, but it's just a bit fine. I've just kind of done a bit of a spell slot. So yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't got to yet, we might have missed?
I think we mentioned it before, but I definitely want to touch on some of the busted spells.
Okay, go on, please.
Yeah, the kind of spells that are 5 out of 10s, or maybe even 6 out of 10s, but I don't want to give them that honor because they don't deserve it. They're objectively the best spells in the game, but they are anti-fun for either the DM, the table, or both.
Yep.
I the ones I've already done in the spellbook are sort of the ones that are most fresh in my mind. So I'll look at those first. But my number one, probably the worst of all of them, even though I've never really had to 10 with them because I literally removed them from my home game because I hate them so much, are all of the conjure spells. Most of them are garbage, but conjure animals and conjure, I believe, woodland beings.
Oh, yeah.
And no, we'll do conjure animals first because it's lower level, 3rd level spell. How about, Mr. DM, I would like you please to procure 16 raptor miniatures, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Don't ignore the fact that you can technically choose all the creatures. Please let me choose all the objectively best creatures. You have this sort of push and pull where you have to either choose to let your player steamroll over your table with a spell that upends every part of your game and your combat and makes you have to run a bunch of monsters, or make them bog down the table by running a bunch of their own monsters.
Yeah.
Because some players are competent enough to actually quickly, efficiently run 16 creatures simultaneously. They're few and far between, but they do exist. Most aren't. Most will bog down your table for 5 minutes, making 16 individual raptor bite attacks and waste your life and your soul, and of everybody else at the table, whilst their characters do nothing because they're having to sort of sidle between 16 raptors.
One round of combat has suddenly tripled in length, so people are like, "Oh, I'll go and make my dinner then, because I'm not going to be seeing the table for for an hour now." And the other thing on that is, if the DM runs it, DM rolling against DM is the single most boring thing. NPCs rolling against NPCs, creatures rolling against other creatures. It's just like nobody. It's just
when it's in small doses, it's totally fine. But yeah, when there's 16 raptors the DM has to resolve, not fun.
Hitting 16 creatures that the DM's also running for is just like the DM whispering to themselves, okay, 16, 24 hits that. That's 3 damage and that, 4 damage, 16. Okay, cool. Do I care about any of that, DM? Because you're just doing maths now by yourself.
Yeah. And then obviously, if you, the DM, take over and you choose the creatures, then they're going to complain that you're screwing them over by choosing lower CR creatures or saying, no, you can't choose a 16. You know, if they, because certainly my thing is, I would tell my players, like, you can cast this spell before I got rid of them outright to replace with the summon spells from Tasha's, which are way cleaner and actually really fun.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. Like, but the conjure spells, or I would say, you can summon 1, you can summon 2, maybe you can summon 4. If you try to summon 8 or 16, I'm going to give you 8 or 16 CR0 creatures that run away immediately because you're not wasting my goddamn time. Like, you're just not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Conjure Woodland Beings is worse because you can summon, I can't remember specifically how many, but enough pixies. Any amount of pixies is enough because the whole thing with pixies is they have like 2 hit points, but they can cast Fly and Polymorph and Dispel Magic, namely Polymorph, which is another like 5 out of 10 amazing, bordering overpowered spell that is crazy. And you summon 8 pixies, I think it is, and they cast Polymorph on all of your allies, and you're now all, I don't know, some creature that is suitably powerful. Then you get an extra 40 hit points or whatever, and they're miserable, absolutely miserable spells to run at the table. They are. Those 2 conjure spells in particular, I would encourage any DM to just say no to. Like, they are genuinely that bad.
I think my druid had both of those and used both of those, and I had that discussion of, I've done some research. Technically, the DM picks the creatures, which was his first like, oh, well, that's not as exciting anymore. And I'm like, yeah. And also, I don't really want that overhead of like you just springing that on me and then me going, what kind of CL1 creatures would be in this environment that are roughly analogous to the kind of thing you want to do? Because I want to meet you halfway. Everybody take 15 minutes because we're going to have I've got to get tokens or minis. I've got to get the stat blocks. And like, great on like, from a video game, like, cool, a bunch of summons. That's just fun to have. I wield an army of creatures. It sounds fun, but then as soon as you play it, it's not fun for pretty much anyone.
Yeah, it's there are definitely ways to use it responsibly, and there are ways. There are a lot of advocates for conjure animals that will talk your ear off about like exactly how you run it to be super cool and fun at your table. But it just requires so much buy-in that like. It should be an opt-in kind of situation, but it's not. It's a spell in the player's handbook that people are going to find and cast.
Yeah. What about your other?
The other big one, like talking about like 9th level spells kind of feels like a cop-out. Yes, having Wish. Wish is every 1st to 8th level spell whenever you need it to be. Yes, that's broken. Like, maybe you shouldn't let your players just pick Wish, but if you want to do it, fucking go for it. It's not the end of the world. It is objectively the best spell in the game because it's every 1st to 8th level spell, including all the broken ones, for free. Well, not for free, for a 9th level slot, but even so, like, it's that flexibility. But it's fun and can be used in a way that isn't super annoying. So I don't think Wish is fine, but I think Wish is acceptable to have at your table, even if you probably shouldn't let your players cast.
I wish for 100 pixies to show up. That's going to be my.
Yep. I mean, technically, that does give you a chance of never being able to cast Wish again. So I'd be okay with letting someone do that. The real big one, I think, is the only one that really jumps out at me as. I think about this spell and I feel a little vein pop in the side of my head, is Force Cage.
Okay, yes, you mentioned it. Yeah, we didn't look back. Yeah, go on. Go on, Em.
Force Cage, and to a much lesser extent, Wall of Force, is a 7th level spell. You create an immobile, invisible, cube-shaped prison that springs into existence for it within 100 feet. It lasts 1 hour, no concentration. It is impenetrable. Spells can't go through it. Creatures have to make a saving throw to be able to teleport out of it or leave it magically. I think I already said, but it can't be dispelled. It is impossible to just. I believe anti-magic field will obviously suppress it, so you can sort of walk out of it, but can't be dispelled. You have to save to get out of it. You can also choose to make it a literal box that is completely, it's a physical sort of shape that you can't get in or out of it. I think it's invisible. So yeah, or you can make it a cage with bars.
Yeah.
That grant creatures 3/4 cover through it.
Oh.
So what that allows you to do is you drop Force Cage on the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They have no way of getting out of it unless they are so big that you literally can't fit them inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they have to be bigger than gargantuan. So good luck, I guess. And they can't get out. Maybe it's like some kind of big dude in armor. Like, if he hits you for 70 damage, but he has to get to you first. Well, now he can't because he's in a Force Cage. All of your ranged guys just sort of line up in a circle and just ping spells at him until he dies. I had that happen to me, and I literally just said, okay, the fight's over. You don't get to play. If I don't get to play the game now, you don't get to play the game. Like, you win. You've cast the spell that wins you the game. You win. Cool. I'm gonna go make tea now and go to bed, I guess, because it was like 10 p.m. and I was literally just gotten to like, well, there's probably 20 minutes of them fighting these two dudes, and they just force caged them, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm done.
No, absolutely, that's the right call to make, because otherwise it's just you're just rolling for the sake of rolling. Like, that combat is effectively, they've been routed. It's over.
Yeah, but it is for the cost of 1 7th level spell slot. You can completely like incapacitate anything. Wall of Force does the same thing, where you make kind of a 15-foot dome to lock someone in, but it's a physical shape. You can't get in, they can't get out. So yes, you can do the whole sort of everyone hold your action and shoot the guy when I drop the Wall of Force. Same thing with Banishment. And it's really annoying, but they might still live after the fact. They probably won't, but they might.
But because it's a cage, you can shoot in.
And they can't really do much out. They might be able to shoot out, and they might be able to do damage. But situationally, it is a one spell, just turn off an encounter. Just it's over. It's done. It is miserable. It is absolutely miserable. I don't think I have, like, I've never really had people abuse conjure animals or conjure woodland beings at my table. That's because I would have never allowed it. This was in the big campaign that I ran that went all the way up to over 20th level. And I had someone new join who I didn't know, and they built the Divination Wizard. The Divination Wizard. All of the tips, all of the tricks. I'm gonna send my simulacrum in. I'm gonna look in through my homunculus. I got 2 lots of portents now, because I only have to see the thing to portent it, and I see through my homunculus's eyes. I'm gonna scatter them. I'm gonna scatter them into the prismatic wall or into the Force Cage. It was miserable. I hated every second of it, and I do not play with that person anymore.
You got to look after yourself too. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to need another session on spells. I underestimated quite how much.
Yeah, no, I'll say I'm up for it. It's been good fun.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So all that's left to say is, well, firstly, is there anything you would like to plug or promote?
No, I talked about them a little bit earlier on, but just like last month I put out Gollum and Davenir's Pocketbook to Ravenloft. I have a few other projects in the works at the moment. I'm currently doing some editing and design stuff for the Dritz's Travelogue of Everything. There's a DM's Guild made compendium of sort of like Tasha's or Xanathar's-esque content. There's a whole bunch of class options. The first one came out in June, and we were like quietly, we had so many ideas. We were like, fuck it, we're just going to start on number 2 before the first one's even done, kind of thing. Like, it's still in layout. Fuck it, we're going to start another one. And that's been really good fun. They both got a full class in them. It's a whole thing. And I've done an astronomical amount of work on that on the second book. And that's fingers crossed, because I'm nearly done with all the editing. It's going to come out next month, depending on how long layout takes. That's more or less everything. You can find all my stuff on just a Dice Average RPG, DM's Guild, or I have a card page. There'll be the links and whatnot.
Oh yes, absolutely. All the links will be in the description. So all that's left to say, finally this time, is thank you ever so much, Jack, for joining us today. That's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was good fun.
And we'll definitely think about more spells would be the topic of the next one, because I'm sure there's plenty more to go on. So
I should imagine so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, as usual, as mentioned, all the links are in the episode description, so please do go and check all of them out. Otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you all for listening, and good night. And now it's time for the Patreon shout-outs. Thank you to Joe from the Fourth Leg podcast. Again, 2-time guests of the show. And the Fourth Leg is a ttrpg podcast all about giving new GMs a leg to stand on. Please go and check them out at the Fourth Leg on Twitter. Thank you to Optional Rule, a 2-time guest of the show and a very insightful and knowledgeable source of information. Please check them out at www.optionalrule.com. Huge thank you to a great friend of the show, Matthew Perkins, who's out there making hilarious and educational Dungeons & Dragons content. Please go and check out his stuff at matthewperkins.net, where you can find links to all of his socials and all of his content, including his own Patreon, which I would very much encourage you to check out. Thank you to Matt Street at mpstreet88 on Twitter for supporting the show. If you need support running your personal or business schedule, head to virtualtimehustle.com or on Instagram to make that difference between should do and done. Boss it better with support from Kat, who will help you get back that essential time you've been searching for. If you would like to support what we do, head over to patreon.com/thinkingcritically, or you can just buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/thinkingcritically